The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbiting Saturn's rings had been quiet for 3 months. Lieutenant Sarah Chen sat at her workstation, coffee growing cold as she scanned through the endless stream of cosmic background radiation. Her shift partner, Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, was dozing in his chair again, despite strict regulations against sleeping on duty. Sarah didn't have the heart to wake him. Nothing ever happened out here anyway. That changed at exactly 14:47 Universal Standard Time. The console erupted in a cascade of beeping alerts that sent Mike tumbling from his chair. Sarah's eyes widened as she watched the signal analysis scroll across her screen. This wasn't space debris or a solar flare. This was a structured transmission, clearly artificial, and it was broadcasting on emergency frequencies that the Galactic Communications Protocol had established decades ago. "Mike, get over here now!" Sarah's voice cracked with excitement and fear. "I'm reading a distress signal. It's not human." Mike stumbled over, still shaking off sleep. "What do you mean, not human? Sarah, we've been through this before. Half the deep space junk we pick up looks weird until we run it through the computers." But as Mike looked at the display, his skepticism evaporated. The signal was broadcasting in 17 different languages, including 3 that their computers identified as variants of languages spoken by the Zalani Commonwealth, humanity's first alien contact from 12 years ago. The message was simple but desperate. Emergency transmission to all sapient species within broadcast range. The Kepler 442 system is under attack by unknown hostile forces. Civilian population of 4 billion requires immediate assistance. Our defense forces have been overwhelmed. This is not a drill. Any vessels capable of rendering aid, please respond immediately. Coordinates attached. Sarah and Mike stared at each other in stunned silence. First contact protocols were clear, but this wasn't first contact. This was a civilization crying out for help, and they were the only ones close enough to hear it. "Sarah, run the math on those coordinates. How far out are they?" Mike was already reaching for the emergency communication array that would patch them directly to Earth Command. "Kepler 442b. It's about 1/200 light-years from Earth. But Mike, the signal is coming through the relay network. That means it's being bounced from station to station. The actual attack could have happened weeks ago, maybe months." The weight of that realization hit them both. By the time any human response could reach the system, it might already be too late. But the protocols were clear. Any distress signal from a known sapient species had to be forwarded to Earth Command immediately. Within minutes, their small monitoring station became the center of a communications hurricane. Earth Command patched in the Admiralty, the Civilian Council, and the Department of Xenological Affairs. Sarah found herself briefing Admiral Harrison, a woman whose reputation for decisive action was legendary even among the outer colonies. "Lieutenant Chen, I need you to confirm the authentication codes on this transmission. Are we certain this is legitimate and not some kind of trap or test?" Sarah's fingers flew across her console. "Ma'am, the authentication codes match perfectly with established Zalani Commonwealth protocols. The linguistic patterns are consistent with emergency broadcasts we've studied from their training materials. I'm confident this is genuine." Admiral Harrison was quiet for a long moment. In the background, Sarah could hear rapid conversations as Earth's leadership grappled with the implications. Humanity had only been part of the broader galactic community for 12 years. They were still considered newcomers, still proving themselves worthy of the advanced technologies and knowledge that older civilizations possessed. "Lieutenant, I'm going to ask you something, and I need your honest assessment. In your opinion, what kind of force could overwhelm a Zalani Commonwealth defense grid?" Sarah had studied the Zalani for years as part of her communications training. Their technology was generations ahead of humanity's, their ships faster and more efficient. They had energy shields that could deflect asteroid impacts and weapons that could vaporize mountains. "Ma'am, it would have to be something extraordinary, The Zilani aren't warriors by nature, but their defensive technology is incredibly advanced. Whatever hit them must have been overwhelming in both scale and capability. The Admiral's voice was grim when she responded. That's what I was afraid you'd say. Lieutenant, I'm authorizing you to transmit a response to that signal. Tell them that the Terran Defense Force has received their distress call and that we're mobilizing a response fleet. Give them our estimated arrival time. But ma'am, Mike interrupted, even with our fastest ships, it would take us months to reach their system, maybe longer. What can we possibly do that their own defenses couldn't? Admiral Harrison's laugh was cold and bitter. Sergeant Rodriguez, you're thinking like someone from a civilized world. The Zilani and most of the Commonwealth species evolved on garden worlds. Stable climates, gentle gravity, abundant resources. Their idea of environmental challenges is seasonal rainfall variation. Sarah was beginning to understand. You mean they've never had to fight for survival the way humans have? Exactly. Earth is what the galactic community calls a death world. Extreme weather, deadly predators, toxic plants, natural disasters, diseases that can wipe out entire populations. We didn't just survive on Earth, we thrived. We turned every challenge into an advantage. When the Zilani first studied human history, they couldn't believe that a single species had survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, plague outbreaks, and still managed to reach space. The implications were staggering. Humanity's entire evolutionary history had been shaped by constant struggle against an environment that was actively trying to kill them. Generation after generation had been forged in the crucible of survival, creating a species that simply didn't understand the concept of giving up. The Zilani call us Deathworlders, Admiral Harrison continued. To them, it's a term of respect and a little bit of fear. They've seen our military exercises. They know what human soldiers are capable of when pushed. If there's something out there that can overwhelm Zilani defenses, it's going to be in for a very unpleasant surprise when it encounters humans who refuse to stay down. The next several hours passed in a blur of activity. Sarah and Mike maintained communication with the distress signal's source while Earth's response fleet was assembled. The scale of the mobilization was unprecedented. Every available military vessel, from massive dreadnoughts to small reconnaissance ships, was being loaded with supplies and personnel. But it wasn't just military vessels. Civilian ships were being retrofitted with defensive systems and pressed into service as supply transports. Mining ships designed for asteroid work were being equipped with military-grade sensors and weapons. Even luxury liners were being converted into medical ships and refugee transports. The response from the Zilani, when it finally came, was transmitted through the same relay network. Sarah's translation software had to work overtime to decode the emotional subtext in their reply, but the gratitude and relief were unmistakable. Terran forces, your response to our distress call is beyond what we dared to hope. We have heard stories of human determination and resilience, but to see it demonstrated in such fashion fills us with hope. We must warn you, however, that the enemy forces are unlike anything we have encountered. They do not respond to communications. They show no interest in negotiation or surrender. They appear to exist solely to destroy and consume. Admiral Harrison's voice was steady when she responded. Zilani Command. This is Admiral Harrison of the Terran Defense Force. Your people showed humanity friendship and guidance when we first reached the stars. We consider you allies and friends. No human will abandon an ally in their darkest hour. Hold your positions. Help is coming. As the hours turned into days, more details about the attack began to emerge through the communications relay. The enemy was systematic and ruthless, targeting population centers and infrastructure with precision that spoke of extensive reconnaissance. They used weapons that drained energy from Zilani shields and turned their own defensive systems against them. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to learn and adapt to every defensive strategy the Zilani employed. Sarah found herself working longer and longer shifts, coordinating between the Zilani survivors and the approaching human fleet. She learned that the attackers called themselves the Devourers, and that this wasn't their first assault on a Commonwealth world. 3 other systems had fallen in the past year, their populations either dead or missing entirely. The human fleet was still weeks away when the next transmission arrived. Sarah's blood ran cold as she read the translated message. Terran forces, we have detected the Devourer fleet regrouping for another assault on our remaining defensive positions. We estimate no more than 72 hours before our final barriers fall. If you cannot reach us in time, please remember us. And please ensure that our history and culture are preserved for future generations. It has been an honor to call humanity friend. Sarah stared at the message, feeling a crushing weight of helplessness. 72 hours. The human fleet was still 3 weeks out, even at maximum speed. There was nothing they could do except watch as an entire civilization was wiped from existence. She was about to begin composing a response when a new voice crackled through her headset. It was Admiral Harrison, but her tone was completely different. There was something dangerous in her voice, something that made Sarah's skin crawl. Lieutenant Chen, patch me through to Zalani Command. Priority Alpha authorization. I need a direct line to their military leadership. Yes, ma'am. Establishing connection now. When the connection was established, Admiral Harrison's voice carried across the light years with crystal clarity. Zalani Command, this is Admiral Harrison. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. You're about to see exactly why the galaxy calls humans Deathworlders. We're not coming to rescue you. We're coming to show these Devourers what happens when they threaten our friends. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah and Mike staring at their consoles in confusion. 3 weeks was still 3 weeks. Physics hadn't changed just because Admiral Harrison sounded confident. That was before the reports started coming in from observation stations throughout the Outer Rim. Ships were arriving at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Not human ships. Ships that moved faster than anything humans had ever built, with energy signatures that defied known physics. Ships that were broadcasting human identification codes. Captain Marcus Steele had never seen anything like the readings his sensors were showing him. The bridge of the TDF Indomitable was alive with activity as his crew tried to make sense of what they were witnessing in the Kepler 442 system. They had arrived 3 days ahead of schedule, thanks to experimental jump drives that pushed the boundaries of what human engineering could achieve. But what they found waiting for them defied every assumption about warfare they had ever made. Captain, I'm reading massive energy discharges from the 4th planet. It looks like the Devourers are using some kind of extraction beam to strip away the atmosphere, reported Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park from the science station. How many survivors on the surface? Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. Thermal scans indicate approximately 40,000 life signs concentrated in underground bunker complexes, down from the 4 billion mentioned in the original distress call. The weight of those numbers hit everyone on the bridge like a physical blow. 4 billion people reduced to 40,000 in a matter of weeks. Marcus had seen warfare before, had fought in the Titan colony uprising and the Mars independence conflict. But this wasn't warfare. This was extermination on a scale that human history could barely comprehend. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surviving Zalani forces, announced Communications Officer Torres. Put it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was weak but filled with desperate hope. Unknown vessels, please identify yourselves. If you are here to assist, we must warn you that the Devourer fleet possesses weapons and capabilities that surpass anything in the Commonwealth arsenal. Marcus straightened in his command chair. Zalani Command, this is Captain Marcus Steele of the Terran Defense Force ship Indomitable. We received your distress call and came as fast as our ships could carry us. What's your current tactical situation? The response came after a long pause, and Marcus could hear the disbelief in the alien commander's voice. "Captain Steele, our long-range sensors indicated that your nearest military installations were weeks away at maximum velocity. How did you arrive so quickly?" "Commander, humans have a saying, where there's a will, there's a way. We modified our jump drives beyond recommended safety parameters. When friends are in trouble, we worry about consequences later. Now tell me about these Devourers." What followed was a tactical briefing that chilled Marcus to the bone. The Devourers didn't just defeat their enemies, they consumed them. Their ships could drain energy from any power source, turning an enemy's own weapons against them. They adapted to every defensive strategy within hours, making conventional military tactics useless. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to feed on the destruction they caused, growing stronger with each victory. "They've been systematically targeting our population centers," the Zilani commander continued. "Our computer models suggest they're not interested in conquest or resources in any traditional sense. They appear to derive some form of sustenance from the act of destruction itself." Marcus exchanged glances with his first officer, Commander Sarah Kim. They had both read the classified reports about species like this. The galaxy was vast and ancient, and humanity was learning that not everything that achieved spaceflight was rational or communicable. Some species evolved along paths that made them fundamentally incompatible with civilized existence. "Commander, I need you to transmit all tactical data you have on Devourer capabilities and weaknesses. My fleet will coordinate with your remaining forces to establish a defensive perimeter around the survivor shelters." "Captain, with respect, you don't understand what you're facing. Our fleet included 12 heavy battle cruisers and 46 support vessels. We had planetary defense grids that could repel asteroid impacts. The Devourers swept through our defenses like they were children's toys." Marcus felt something cold and predatory wake up in his chest. It was the same feeling he'd experienced during the war games with Commonwealth forces, when their advanced tactics and superior technology had been methodically dismantled by human unpredictability and aggression. "Commander, there's something you need to understand about humans. We didn't get to space by being the strongest or the smartest species on our world. We got here by being the most stubborn. When something tries to kill us, we don't just defend ourselves. We find a way to kill it back." The next several hours were spent in frantic preparation. The human fleet consisted of 28 vessels of various classes, from the massive dreadnought TDF Retribution to small corvettes that were barely larger than shuttlecraft. What they lacked in advanced technology, they made up for in adaptability and pure aggressive creativity. Commander Park had been analyzing the Devourer energy signatures, cross-referencing them with everything humanity had learned about exotic physics in the past 12 years. Her findings were disturbing. "Captain, the Devourers aren't using any technology we recognize. Their energy patterns suggest they're somehow manipulating fundamental forces at a quantum level. It's like they're rewriting the laws of physics in localized spaces around their ships. Is there any theoretical way to counter that kind of ability?" "Theoretically, yes. If we could introduce enough chaotic variables into their operating environment, their systems might not be able to adapt quickly enough. But that would require generating massive amounts of unpredictable energy fluctuations while simultaneously engaging them in combat." Marcus smiled grimly. "Commander, you just described every human military engagement for the past 3 centuries. We specialize in chaos." The Devourer fleet arrived right on schedule, emerging from whatever dimension they used for faster-than-light travel with the precision of a ticking clock. Long-range sensors counted 47 vessels, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. They moved with fluid grace, like living creatures rather than mechanical constructs. "All ships, this is Admiral Harrison on the TDF Retribution. You know the plan. Human vessels will engage using Pattern Omega tactics. Do not attempt to match their technology. Do not try to outthink their adaptations. Instead, be more human than they can possibly comprehend. Show them what Deathworld evolution really means. The first engagement began when the Devourer fleet was still 3 million kilometers out. The human ships spread into a formation that would have made any trained military strategist weep with frustration. Instead of maintaining defensive positions, they scattered like startled birds, each vessel following wildly different attack vectors. The TDF Wolverine, a small frigate with barely enough firepower to threaten a space station, suddenly accelerated directly toward the largest Devourer vessel while spinning on all 3 axes and firing randomly in every direction. The TDF Mongoose began launching every missile in its inventory while flying backward and broadcasting music from Earth's classical period at maximum volume. "Captain, the Devourers are trying to analyze our tactics," reported Torres from communications. "I'm picking up massive computational activity from their fleet." "Good. Let them try to figure out our strategy. The secret is that we don't have one." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The Devourer ships, designed to adapt and counter organized military tactics, found themselves facing something their creators had never imagined: organized chaos. Every time their systems began to predict human behavior, the humans changed everything they were doing for no apparent reason. The TDF Badger suddenly reversed direction and began ramming smaller Devourer vessels, while its crew sang drinking songs. The TDF Viper started using its main engines as weapons, creating massive plasma bursts that served no tactical purpose but forced the Devourers to constantly recalculate threat assessments. Captain Steele watched the battle unfold with savage satisfaction. "Commander Kim, begin Phase 2. "Aye, sir. All ships, execute Lunatic Protocol." The Lunatic Protocol was something that existed only in human military doctrine, and only because humans were insane enough to implement it. Every ship in the fleet began overloading their own systems deliberately, creating massive energy signatures that made accurate targeting impossible. They fired their weapons at empty space, broadcast jamming signals at their own allies, and performed maneuvers that violated basic principles of space combat. The Devourer fleet, for the first time in their recorded history, hesitated. "Their computational systems are overloading," reported Commander Park with barely contained excitement. "They're trying to process too many variables at once. Their adaptation matrix can't keep up with our chaos generation." Marcus opened a channel to the surviving Zilani forces. "Zilani Command, this is Captain Steele. I need your remaining ships to do exactly what I tell you, even if it seems completely insane." "Captain, we are prepared to follow your lead." "Excellent. I need you to target our ships, not the Devourers. Aim for our vessels and fire everything you have." The pause that followed stretched for nearly 30 seconds. "Captain, did you just order us to attack your own fleet?" "Trust me, Commander. Fire on our ships. We'll coordinate our shields to deflect your shots toward the Devourer formation. They're expecting rational tactics. We're going to give them something that makes no tactical sense whatsoever." What followed was the most bizarre space battle in recorded history. Zilani ships fired on human vessels, who used their shields and maneuvering thrusters to redirect the attacks toward Devourer positions. Meanwhile, human ships continued their chaotic assault patterns, creating a 3-dimensional maze of energy discharges, debris clouds, and completely unpredictable movement. The turning point came when the TDF Honey Badger, living up to its namesake's reputation, performed a maneuver that would have been impossible if its crew had been sane. The small destroyer aimed itself directly at the largest Devourer vessel and accelerated to ramming speed while simultaneously overloading its reactor core. "TDF Honey Badger, what are you doing?" Marcus demanded over the communications channel. "Captain, this is Commander Walsh on the Honey Badger. We're showing these things what humans do when we get really annoyed. If they want to eat worlds, they can try eating a nuclear detonation from the inside." The Honey Badger slammed into the Devourer flagship just as its reactor went critical. The explosion that followed wasn't just a nuclear detonation. It was a controlled supernova that briefly outshone the system's star. The flagship and 3 nearby Devourer vessels simply ceased to exist. The effect on the remaining Devourer fleet was immediate and profound. For creatures that fed on destruction and chaos, witnessing another species deliberately destroy themselves in order to inflict damage was incomprehensible. Their formation wavered, their adaptive systems flickered, and for the first time since entering the system, they began to retreat. "All ships, pursue and destroy," Admiral Harrison's voice echoed across the fleet. "Do not let a single one of these things escape to threaten another world." The chase that followed took the combined human and Zilani forces to the edge of the system and beyond. The Devourers, their confidence shattered by an enemy that refused to behave according to any rational pattern, found themselves being systematically hunted by creatures that seemed to treat suicidal tactics as routine military procedure. By the time the last Devourer vessel was destroyed, the human fleet had lost 6 ships and nearly 2,000 personnel. But they had accomplished something that the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had believed impossible. They had not just defeated the Devourers, they had broken them psychologically, forcing beings that fed on destruction to flee in terror from an enemy that embraced destruction as enthusiastically as they did. Captain Steele stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking out at the debris field that marked the end of the battle. His communications officer was already coordinating with the Zilani survivors to begin search and rescue operations for the 40,000 civilians who had somehow managed to survive the orbital bombardment. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command," Torres announced. "Admiral Harrison wants to speak with you." Marcus straightened his uniform and prepared to explain why his battle plan had consisted mainly of organized insanity and controlled suicide attacks. Instead, Admiral Harrison's first words caught him completely off guard. "Captain Steele, you and your crew have just demonstrated why the galaxy considers humans to be Deathworlders. What you accomplished today will be remembered for millennia. You didn't just save the Zilani. You sent a message to every hostile force in the galaxy that humans don't just defend their friends. We make their enemies regret being born." Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel TDF Harmony, watching as massive construction ships worked to rebuild the orbital infrastructure around Kepler 442b. 6 months had passed since the battle that the galactic community was already calling the Devourer War, and the political ramifications were still spreading across known space like ripples on a pond. The Zilani population on the surface has stabilized at just over 38,000, reported Dr. Michael Chen, the head of the humanitarian mission. The underground shelters protected them from the worst of the atmospheric stripping, but it's going to take decades to restore the planet's ecosystem. Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on the communications array that was broadcasting the proceedings of the Galactic Commonwealth Assembly. For the first time in human history, Earth's representatives were not seated in the observer section. They had been invited to the primary council chambers, and the debate currently raging was about humanity's new status in the galactic community. The voice of Supreme Counselor Yethron, representing the ancient Catherian Empire, echoed through the chamber. "Honored delegates, we have witnessed something unprecedented in our recorded history. A species barely 12 years beyond first contact has successfully engaged and defeated a threat that has terrorized the Outer Rim for over a century." Elena smiled grimly. The Devourers hadn't just threatened the Zilani. Intelligence reports gathered in the aftermath of the battle revealed that they had been systematically exterminating entire civilizations for generations. The Commonwealth's oldest members had known about the threat, but had never found a way to combat entities that could adapt to any conventional military strategy within hours. "The question before us," continued Supreme Counselor Yethron, is not whether humanity deserves recognition for their actions. The question is whether we are prepared to accept what their success implies about our own defensive capabilities. That was the heart of the political earthquake, currently shaking the galaxy. For thousands of years, the Commonwealth had maintained peace through superior technology and diplomatic sophistication. The older civilizations had convinced themselves that wisdom and advanced science were all that mattered in interstellar relations. The idea that raw aggression and controlled chaos could be more effective than their carefully planned strategies was deeply disturbing to species that had evolved past the need for violence. Dr. Chen joined Elena at the observation window, holding a datapad with the latest reports from Earth. "Ambassador, I thought you should see this. The Commonwealth Science Council has formally requested access to human military doctrine and training protocols. They want to study what they're calling applied chaos theory in defensive scenarios." Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Michael, they're trying to figure out how to teach their people to think like humans. The problem is that you can't just learn to be aggressive and unpredictable. Those traits have to be forged by necessity over millions of years of evolutionary pressure." The communications array crackled to life with a priority transmission from Earth Command. Elena recognized the voice immediately. Admiral Harrison, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Terran Defense Forces, following her success in coordinating the Devourer response. "Ambassador Vasquez, we need to discuss the latest developments. The Commonwealth Council has made a formal request for Earth to establish permanent defensive installations in 12 systems along the Outer Rim. They're essentially asking us to become the military arm of their civilization." Elena had been expecting this. The battle had demonstrated that human tactical thinking could overcome threats that conventional Commonwealth forces couldn't handle. But it also raised uncomfortable questions about what humanity's role in galactic politics should be. "Admiral, what's Earth's position on their request?" The President and the Cabinet are split. On one hand, it would give us access to advanced Commonwealth technology and establish humanity as a major galactic power overnight. On the other hand, we'd essentially be signing up to become the galaxy's police force. Every time some new threat emerges, they'll expect us to handle it. Elena understood the dilemma. Humanity had always dreamed of being accepted as equals in the galactic community. But they had imagined earning that acceptance through scientific advancement or diplomatic skill, not by demonstrating superior capacity for violence. A soft chime indicated another priority transmission, this one from the surface of Kepler 442b. Elena activated the viewer to see Commander Thel Nara, the highest-ranking surviving Zalani military officer. "Ambassador Vasquez, I hope I am not interrupting, but I felt it was important to share something with you directly. We have completed our analysis of the Devourer technology recovered from the battlefield." Elena leaned forward with interest. The Commonwealth scientific teams had been studying the alien tech for months, trying to understand how beings could manipulate fundamental forces so effortlessly. "What did you find, Commander?" "The Devourers were not originally a spacefaring species. They were created, engineered by an unknown civilization approximately 50,000 years ago. Their purpose was to serve as the ultimate military force, capable of adapting to any threat and consuming any resistance." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. "You're saying they were weapons. Someone created them as the perfect military tool." "Precisely. And according to the data we recovered, they were never supposed to develop independent consciousness or reproductive capability. They were meant to be controlled tools, not an autonomous species. Something went wrong with their programming approximately 15,000 years ago." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Commander, are you telling me that whoever created the Devourers might still be out there?" "We don't know. But, Ambassador, there's something else. The Devourers' records contain references to dozens of other species that were engineered for specific military purposes. If even a fraction of them achieved independence the way the Devourers did, The transmission ended, leaving Elena staring at a blank screen while her mind raced through the possibilities. The galaxy wasn't just dealing with one species of engineered killers. There could be dozens of them, all designed to be perfect weapons, all potentially beyond the control of their creators. Dr. Chen had gone pale during the conversation. Elena, if there are more species like the Devourers out there, the Commonwealth is going to need human military capabilities more than ever. We might be looking at a complete reorganization of galactic civilization. Elena activated the communications array and requested a direct channel to Earth Command. When Admiral Harrison's face appeared on the screen, Elena could see that she had already been briefed on the Zalani findings. Admiral, I think it's time for humanity to make a decision about our role in galactic affairs. The Commonwealth needs us, but they need us to be exactly what we already are, Deathworlders with a talent for destructive creativity. I've been thinking the same thing, Ambassador. The Cabinet has authorized me to present a counter-proposal to the Commonwealth Council. Instead of establishing human military bases in Commonwealth space, we're proposing the creation of joint defense academies where Commonwealth species can learn human tactical thinking while humans learn advanced Commonwealth technology. It was an elegant solution, Elena realized. Rather than becoming the galaxy's military force, humanity would teach other species how to think like Deathworlders when the situation demanded it. It would preserve the independence of Commonwealth civilizations while ensuring they had access to the kind of aggressive, chaotic tactical thinking that had proven effective against engineered weapons. There's one more thing, Ambassador. We've received a response to our general broadcast about the Devourer threat. 12 different species have reported encounters with what they now realize were probably other engineered weapons. We're looking at a galaxy-wide phenomenon that's been building for millennia. Elena closed her eyes and tried to process the scope of what they were facing. Somewhere in the galaxy's distant past, an unknown civilization had decided to create living weapons and then lost control of them. The result was dozens of species designed for nothing but destruction, scattered across thousands of star systems. Admiral, what's our timeline for implementing the Defense Academy proposal? The Commonwealth Council is meeting in emergency session tomorrow. They'll either accept our proposal or formally request that Earth establish a military protectorate over the Outer Rim systems. Either way, humanity's isolationist period is officially over. Elena activated the ship's intercom system and addressed the entire crew. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to witness a historic moment. For the first time in galactic history, a newly contacted species is being offered full partnership status in the Commonwealth Council. Not because of our technology or our wisdom, but because we're the only species crazy enough to fight fire with fire. The crew's laughter echoed through the ship, but Elena could hear the tension underlying it. They all understood what was happening. Humanity was being asked to share the burden of galactic defense, to stand as guardians against threats that older, wiser civilizations couldn't handle. The next day, Elena stood in the Commonwealth Council chambers as Admiral Harrison presented humanity's proposal to the assembled delegates. Representatives of 47 different species listened as she explained the concept of joint defense academies, where survival instincts and tactical creativity would be taught alongside advanced technology and strategic planning. Honored delegates, Admiral Harrison concluded, humanity offers not just our military capabilities, but our perspective. We understand that survival often requires actions that civilized beings find distasteful. We're willing to bear that burden, but we won't do it alone. Let us teach you to think like Deathworlders when the situation demands it, and you can teach us to build the kind of civilization worth defending. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in Commonwealth history, a species was granted full council membership less than 15 years after first contact. But more importantly, the galaxy had found a new model for defense against existential threats. Combining the wisdom and technology of ancient civilizations with the aggressive adaptability of a species forged by a Deathworld's challenges. Elena watched the celebration from the observation deck of the Harmony, knowing that humanity had just stepped onto a stage that would define their role in galactic civilization for generations to come. They were no longer the new species seeking acceptance. They were the Deathworlders who had proven that sometimes the best defense against engineered chaos was natural chaos wielded by beings too stubborn to accept defeat. In the months that followed, human instructors would spread across Commonwealth space, teaching alien cadets how to think tactically when facing impossible odds. Meanwhile, alien scientists and engineers would work alongside human researchers to develop new technologies that could adapt to unknown threats as quickly as human creativity could devise new tactics. The SOS signal that had summoned Deathworlders to alien worlds had done more than save the Zalani. It had changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization, proving that sometimes the most advanced societies needed to remember the basic truth that had driven life on Earth for millions of years. When something tries to destroy you, the correct response isn't to understand it or negotiate with it. The correct response is to become more dangerous than it is and make it regret the attempt.